in life are so good you simply have to pay for them. Tickets to a Travis concert, a special collector's edition DVD of Space Jam, sex, you know, things like that. We're also used to paying for our wrestling entertainment, whether it's a ticket to a live event, a subscription to a streaming service, or access to an order-only event. Traditional pay-per-view may be a thing of the past, at least as far as WWE are concerned, but back in the day, we were all happy to fork over our hard-earned cash, alright, let's be honest, our mum and dad's hard-earned cash, on the off chance that we would see a classic match, title change, or other monumental happening. Though rare, pay-per-views occasionally house the debut of a new wrestler too. Typically, companies would bring a new character in with some hype and let them get over on TV before they were put on pay-per-view, but sometimes organizations threw them straight into the fire on their monthly specials. The results were usually mixed, but regardless of the outcome, that these wrestlers were deemed so special that we had to cough up to get a first glimpse tells you everything you need to know about them. Wait a minute, no it doesn't. Let me tell you more. I'm Adam Pachisi from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are 10 wrestlers who had their debut match on pay-per-view. Join us. Number 10, MVP. The original MVP character was a genius creation for its time. The highest paid free agent in SmackDown history was patterned after stars from the world of real sports, particularly basketball and American football players, who came into their chosen fields with hype, entourages, and plenty of bling. Montel Vontavious Porter first emerged on our screens in August of 2006, showing up in the crowd or in backstage segments, often flanked by beautiful women and/or his bodyguard. He would talk to general manager Teddy Long about the progress of his big fat contract, which an unseen agent was supposedly negotiating for him. Eventually, he signed on the dotted line as he revealed in a press conference that aired on the Blue Show. 2 weeks later, the arrogant prima donna made his in-ring debut, not on SmackDown, but at the No Mercy pay-per-view. MVP made a suitably elaborate entrance before easily beating journeyman enhancement talent Marty Garner. While unimpressive on the surface, it was the perfect debut for the heel, as he was supposed to be overpaid and overrated, and drew heat for his mannerisms, outfit choice, and the caliber of his chosen opponent. Both the fans and Michael Cole and JBL on commentary really laid into him. WWE management clearly liked what they saw, however, as he was soon programmed with top stars Kane and The Undertaker, and moved from strength to strength from there. Number 9, Kurt Angle. When Kurt Angle was plugging away in developmental, preparing for his WWE debut, he erroneously thought that he would be the biggest babyface in the world when he finally made it to TV. Vince McMahon, in his infinite wisdom, knew that the opposite would be true. The clean-cut, successful, and enviously athletic Olympic gold medalist was only ever going to be a heel during the hell-raising Attitude Era. Vignettes announcing Angle's imminent arrival began to air on WWE television, showing the American hero talking about his 3 eyes. Intensity, integrity, and intelligence, while boasting the claim that he was the most celebrated real athlete in WWE history. When he made his in-ring bow at the 1999 Survivor Series, fans were not impressed by his traditional amateur wrestling style or his white bread appearance and demeanor. Interestingly, while he was in the process of working over his opponent, Shawn Stasiak, Vince McMahon informed the referee over his headset that he wanted Kurt to cut an unscripted mid-match promo scolding the fans for booing him. As if he wouldn't have been nervous enough, Angle delivered the promo and must have passed the test, since from then on he tasted nothing but success. Number 8, Taz. Following Angle's pay-per-view debut, he went on a winning streak that lasted until the 2000 Royal Rumble, where he was defeated by another star who was wrestling his first televised WWE match. Taz had done everything there was to do in ECW and left the organization in late 1999 to sign with WWE. He didn't get any vignettes announcing his impending arrival or fleshing out his character for the new audience, but there were some hints dropped in the weeks leading up to the show, as the lights would randomly drop out and fragments of his entrance video and ring music would play. When he was announced as Angle's surprise opponent, the Madison Square Garden crowd lost their minds. Like, freaking seriously, you guys, what? You don't believe me? Get out of here! It was a great start, but it got better as Taz and Angle had a short but dynamic match where the human suplex machine looked mightily impressive. Better still, the former ECW champion was booked to get the victory with his finisher, making Kurt pass out in the Taz mission. Angle naturally would protest protest that the result was null and void as the Taz mission was an illegal choke, but it was off to the races for the man from Red Hook, Brooklyn. It was a short, disappointing race that ended too soon, of course, but hey, what a debut! Number 7, Goldust. Goldust is one of the most memorable WWE gimmicks ever, but the character didn't get off to a rip-roaring start. The vignettes that played on Raw and Superstars for months were intriguing, and you couldn't help but want to see what this gold-painted weirdo talking about Hollywood films was all about once he stepped inside the squared circle. His debut was set for In Your House 4, a ho-hum event that perfectly illustrated the creative malaise WWE were experiencing at the time. Still, Dustin Rhodes was given every opportunity to shine, since he was placed in a featured match, given the dependable Marty Jannetty as his opponents, and a not-too-shabby 11 minutes to play with. Regrettably, the bout was a bomb, as the Bizarre One did mostly stalling and rest holds, and while Party Marty tried to inject some life into the proceedings, the match died a death with the live crowd. Goldie got the win, but he can't have felt like a winner when he got backstage, knowing that his debut was one to forget. Thankfully, WWE persevered with Goldust, and he figured things out, entering much better performances later on, and getting over and staying over with the audience. Number 6, The Giant. One of the most spectacular debuts in wrestling history, Paul White not only had his first WCW match in the main event of a major pay-per-view, but he beat top star Hulk Hogan for the World Heavyweight title too. The Giant had been unsuccessfully trying to get into the business for a while and only had one independent match under his belt before being gobbled up by Eric Bischoff's promotion. He was introduced as the son of Andre the Giant, though this was later dropped, and aligned with Kevin Sullivan's dastardly Dungeon of Doom. Impressed with his look and athleticism, WCW saw big money in Paul White and didn't mess about moving him up the card, booking him against the Hulkster at the 1995 Halloween Havoc. But hold on a second! Before the wrestling could occur, there was the small matter of a monster truck sumo match, which took place on top of Detroit's Cobo Hall and ended with the 7-footer falling off the side of the building. While logic would dictate that such an impact would end the Giant's career and possibly his life before it even had a chance to start, he showed up as scheduled for the main event, displaying not even so much as a scratch on him as he beat Hogan by disqualification and claimed the title, for a week at least, due to a technicality. Number 5, The Rock. He's the world's biggest movie star and a probable future president of the United States these days, but once upon a time, The Rock was another young bonebender struggling to make his way in the crazy world of sports entertainment. Long before the catchphrases and referring to himself in the third person, Dwayne Johnson was plain old Rocky Maivia, the good-looking son of Rocky Johnson and grandson of High Chief Peter Maivia. He had the body and the lineage, and WWE execs, particularly Jim Ross and Pat Patterson, saw big things in the future of the former college football star. Despite his relative inexperience, WWE debuted Rocky Maivia at the 1996 Survivor Series. The event was historic, being the 10th annual version of the pay-per-view format and emanating from the hallowed Madison Square Garden. The Blue Chipper, as he was referred to, teamed with Jake Roberts, Mark Merrow and the Stalker to beat Triple H, Jerry Lawler, Crush and Goldust in a long and not particularly thrilling match. The Rock was the standout, winning the bout as sole survivor and notching 2 eliminations along the way. The smiling babyface act was passé, yes, but the People's Champion showed enough early promise to hint at great things to come. Number 4, Vader. Vader always seemed to have impactful debuts wherever he went. In New Japan, he took apart the legendary Antonio Inoki in short order and almost caused a riot on his first night in, while in WWE he was the big story of the 1996 Royal Rumble match, scoring several eliminations and re-entering the match after being eliminated to wreak yet more havoc. The Mastodon was no stranger to debuting on pay-per-view in a high-pressure situation, of course, having done so for WCW 6 years earlier. Big Van Vader's WCW arrival was preluded with clips of him wrecking fools in the Far East, his first match scheduled for the 1990 Great American Bash. The poor hapless bastard picked as his dinner that night was Tom Z-Man Zenk. It was only ever going to go one way, and Vader completely mopped the floor with him in ruthless fashion. The Big Van Vader character had thunderously arrived on the North American scene, and then disappeared just as quick, working a few house shows before leaving and then reappearing 7 months later. Still, the 1990 Bash was a nice taster of what the super heavyweight was all about, and he certainly made an impression. On Tom Zenk's face, anyway. Number 3, Mark Henry. Superstar athletes from other sports tend to get preferential treatment in wrestling, at least when it comes to recruitment. WWE went all out to sign Brock Lesnar, offering him the biggest developmental deal in their history on the back of him winning the NCAA Division I heavyweight title in amateur wrestling. They paid MMA sensation Ronda Rousey a small fortune and booked her first bout for WrestleMania 34. And Mark Henry, a powerlifting phenomenon, was signed to a lucrative, unheard of 10-year deal back in the mid-90s. In a bid to get a quick return on their investment, WWE debuted Henry before he was truly ready, putting him out there with Jerry Lawler for his first match at In Your House Mind Games. The world's strongest man had a lot of raw talent and ability, but at this stage hadn't come close to putting it all together. The King walked him through a basic bout where nothing could conceivably go wrong, making Henry look competent before he succumbed to a backbreaker. Post-match, Henry wiped out Leif Cassidy, Marty Jannetty, and Triple H, and then played to the crowd while Pyro went off. Injuries and further training meant that we wouldn't see much of him for the next year, but he eventually came good and became quite the wig splitter. Number 2, Fandango. Debuting on a major pay-per-view must be nerve-wracking enough, but to have your first proper televised WWE match at WrestleMania? Goodness me! As mentioned before, Ronda Rousey worked her first bout at the Showcase of the Immortals, so too did Big E Langston. And then there's the curious tale of Fandango, NXT Season 3 winner Johnny Curtis doing a ballroom dancer gimmick that Vince McMahon just seemed to absolutely love. His debut was teased many times, but Twinkle Toes refused to go through with it again and again because ring announcers didn't pronounce his name properly, or so he said. Eventually, he found himself in the ring with Chris Jericho at WrestleMania 29. He got the elaborate entrance and looked competitive enough against a legendary veteran. In fact, the match was, at that point, the in-ring highlight of the show, granted that's not saying much, and seemed to indicate that Fandango might not be a flash in the pan. Amazingly, he was booked to go over Y2J on the night, but that's simply where the fun began, because after Mania, the WWE Universe was totally consumed with singing along to his entrance music, aka Fandangoing. The scenes of fans doing so in arenas, on public transport, and everywhere else being far more remembered than his shock victory over Jericho. Number 1, The Undertaker. After leaving WCW and having positive talks with WWE, Mark Calaway decided to sign with the company and awaited a call to tell him what gimmick he would be portraying. His heart sunk when he saw that WWE were teasing something coming out of a giant egg at the 1990 Survivor Series, certain that his lanky frame would be hatching on Thanksgiving and that he would be Eggman or some other ridiculous character. Fortunately, he was spared that indignity and instead given another gimmick that, on the surface at least, seemed no less ridiculous. The Undertaker made his debut as the surprise partner of the $1 Million Team, joining Ted DiBiase, the Honky Tonk Man, and Greg Valentine against Dusty Rhodes, Koko Beware, and the Hart Foundation. Making an instant impact, the Dead Man eliminated the Birdman and the American Dream before getting counted out. Nobody had seen anything like the Zombie Mortician before, and in the cartoon world of the era, he stuck out as genuinely frightening. While I'm personally gutted that we never got to see Eggman in all of its glory, Taker's debut stands as one of the best ever, setting him up nicely for an unparalleled 30-year career.